I'm Paul Edwards, author of the Mourners Woods books, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight, I'm watching Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah from 1991. In 1984, Japan rebooted their Godzilla franchise with a movie that was released here in the United States as Godzilla 1985. This movie ignored all previous Godzilla movies except for the 1954 original. And with this reboot of the franchise, Toho Studios was reintroducing their classic giant monsters as if for the first time. Now, the first sequel to Godzilla 1985, or Return of Godzilla, as it was known in Japan, was Godzilla vs. Biollante. Biollante was a new monster, and the film did not do well. It didn't do well in Japan, it didn't do well in other markets, and a lot of people just didn't care for it. So rather than gamble on another new monster, Toho Studios decided that they were going to bring back one of the classics. They were going to bring back King Ghidorah, the three-headed golden dragon from outer space that had fought Godzilla 4 times in the original run of Godzilla movies. So Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah had built-in marketing just by the name King Ghidorah, because King Ghidorah had always been a popular adversary for Godzilla. The movie delivers on the monsters, absolutely. The number one problem with this movie is the complete lack of logic to it. And I don't mean lack of logic because 300-foot tall reptiles shouldn't exist. If that's your objection, you're never going to be happy with any of these movies. No. We can suspend the state of disbelief to accept that. But it's illogical what happens in the story that they're telling us with these gigantic monsters. And as I've said many times, an audience will accept your initial premise, but everything that you do from that premise has to be logical, or that's where you're going to lose your audience. So you can start with a far-out premise, but everything that you do from there should make sense. So what happens in this film is a futuristic spaceship type aircraft lands in Tokyo, and we're introduced to 3 human beings who tell us that they are from the future. And these 3 human beings, 2 men and 1 woman, the woman is from Japan, and the men, although it's not expressly made clear, I always thought it was pretty clear that the 1 man is from America and the 1 man is from Russia. These visitors from the future tell us that they're here to save Japan because in the future, Godzilla will become so dangerous that he destroys the whole country. And so they have a great idea. They're going to time travel back to the 1940s, to a time when a Japanese military expedition encountered a dinosaur out on this island in the Pacific Ocean. Because this dinosaur, the theory is, was exposed to radiation after the war and grew to become Godzilla. So with a group of people from our time, the future visitors time travel back to 1944, and they are able to relocate the Godzillasaurus, the dinosaur that would become Godzilla. They relocate it so that it does not become exposed to the A-bomb tests after the war and does not grow to become the Godzilla we know. Unfortunately, these future visitors leave something behind before they return to our time. They leave behind 3 genetically engineered creatures called Dorats, little I think they were supposed to be cute, but little pseudo-cute critters about maybe 1 foot tall. And they leave these creatures behind on the island where they instead will be exposed to this radiation. So the group returns to the present being 1991, and they discover when they get back that Godzilla has been erased from the course of history. So they were successful in that regard. But unfortunately, Godzilla has been replaced by a new monster, the monster King Ghidorah, which is a 3-headed abomination that has been created by the fusing of these 3 Dorat creatures that the visitors left behind to get irradiated in Godzilla's place. And now, suddenly, this new monster has appeared, King Ghidorah, and King Ghidorah starts attacking the cities of Japan, and no longer do we have Godzilla to fight it away. So it turns out that the 2 men of the visitors from the future had this master plan all along. Their goal was to, of course, destroy Japan, not to save Japan as they claimed. And their goal was to take away Godzilla, who would become Japan's defender, and replace Godzilla with their monster, King Ghidorah, who is under their mind control. Well, the young Japanese woman from the future is appalled to learn the whole extent of this truth and converts over to our side and helps us to fight back against the future visitors. Meanwhile, the Godzillasaurus dinosaur has been relocated from where it was in 1944 and becomes irradiated years later from where it lurks at the bottom of the ocean to become an even larger Godzilla. And this was a little bit lost in translation into the English version, but Godzilla was now twice the size of what he had been before. And this new twice the size Godzilla is able to take on King Ghidorah all by himself, as opposed to in the previous movies where Godzilla usually needed the backup of a number of allies in order to fight Ghidorah. So Godzilla and King Ghidorah have a big battle, and Godzilla wins. He, in fact, severs the middle head of King Ghidorah. And Godzilla then proceeds to rampage across the Japanese countryside. But, of course, he's even bigger than he was before, and he seems completely unstoppable now. Of course, he always was unstoppable, but we're supposed to think now he's even more dangerous than he previously had been. And so the good guys come up with a plan that they're going to get King Ghidorah, who we all think is dead, they're going to get King Ghidorah to help fight against this new and improved Godzilla. So they time travel back to the future period where this group of characters came from in the first place, 200 years in the future, recover the carcass of King Ghidorah from the bottom of the ocean, hype it up with futuristic technology, and bring it back to 1991 as Mecha King Ghidorah. And Mecha King Ghidorah, with its new awesome cybernetic upgrades, is a match for this super large Godzilla and captures it and brings it to far out to sea where the creature and Godzilla end up at the bottom of the sea. And that's where our movie ends. Okay. So a few things here. First of all, as a writer, I'm well aware of the fact that time travel stories always have contradictions in them, just by definition. And you can hate me in the comments, but time travel stories, I'm not saying they're not good, they can be good, but they always have contradictions in them. And this movie is chock full of them. A big one, it's hard to even pick which ones to talk about. A big one is, if the mission to erase Godzilla from history was successful, then how is it that people in 1991 are able to look around and say, oh, Godzilla's gone? Shouldn't they have never known who Godzilla was? Because didn't they now grow up in a timeline where Godzilla never came to be? That's just one example. The whole time travel logic is screwy as anything. But okay, let's even suppose that you were willing to put that aside, that your willing suspension of disbelief was able to ignore that, okay? There are so many basic things that wouldn't work in this movie. For example, the Godzillasaurus is wounded, mortally wounded in 1944. And they transport it out into the ocean where it won't get exposed to the A-bomb tests on this island, like, 10 years in the future. So you're telling me that this Godzillasaurus stayed alive, mortally wounded, stayed alive underwater for 10 years until the A-bomb tests? Does that make any sense? It's not a water-breathing animal in the first place. It's mortally wounded. It didn't get any better. And it doesn't move for 10 years. It's still right where you left it 10 years later, even if it was alive. None of that makes any sense. It's even worse when they do the same thing with King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah fights Godzilla in 1991 and loses. One of its heads is decapitated. And it's dumped in the ocean. And this is not a water-breathing creature. It lays at the bottom of the ocean, comatose, but not actually dead, for 200 years. And when they find it in the year 2204, it's still in the exact same condition it was when it was dumped there in 1999, or 1991 rather. Fish haven't eaten it. Decay hasn't worn it down. Time has done nothing to it. The carcass is still there. Shouldn't it just be a tremendous skeleton by now? I mean, what organic matter is going to last in the ocean untouched by fish, scavenger animals, sharks, anything, plankton, anything that's in the ocean? How is King Ghidorah? And it's not even covered with seaweed or anything. It's just laying there as if it was just deposited there, an hour ago. Makes no sense whatsoever. Not to mention the fact that King Ghidorah shouldn't still be alive. If it were still alive, why hasn't it moved for 200 years? It's clearly dead. And the carcass shouldn't even be there. It should have been completely consumed. There should just be a gigantic skeleton there. So, no matter how much you're willing to suspend disbelief, these things just stand out so glaringly. You just want to throw your hands up in the air and say, what are you talking about? How could this possibly be true? So it's very frustrating if you use the logical left side of your brain. The best way to enjoy this movie is to completely detach the logical left side of your brain from the experience and just enjoy seeing and hearing the monsters and watching them rampage and watching them fight. And just taking the story as a framework for presenting you with the monsters, because it's the only way that you're going to enjoy this movie. It doesn't make, and there's so many logical problems with this movie. It's just too much. You can make a movie about gigantic monsters and people will suspend disbelief. Or you can make a movie about time travel, which is inherently illogical, and people will suspend disbelief. Or you can make a movie where there's, a logical inconsistency that a dinosaur is laying comatose at the bottom of the ocean for years or centuries and isn't gobbled up by the fish and is still alive, even though it doesn't move, doesn't eat or anything. The problem is you can't have all of these in the same movie. It's just too much. It's too much of a scrambled mess to accept as a story. It's just too out there. You just have to be watching it for the monsters. Now, that's my main criticism of this movie. My other criticism of this movie in the English language dub is that in the first half hour or so, this movie is constantly having one character repeat what another character just said. These people are here from the future to visit us. So, these people are here from the future to visit us? They must do that 10 times. And it's inane. I'm sure in the original Japanese, the dialogue was more clever than that. But in the English language dub, it's terribly repetitive and, laughable. Now, a completely different criticism was leveled against this movie when it came out. The criticism was that this movie was anti-American. And the way the criticism goes, the movie is pro-Japan. The characters are trying to save the country of Japan, of course, because one day Japan will become this great and glorious world power that outshines all the other countries of the world. And the villains are political radicals from the future who want to destroy the great Uber Japan before it can ever be created. Much like the time travelers were going to destroy Godzilla before he was ever created by moving the Godzillasaurus. So it's very pro-Japan. And during the Pacific Ocean scenes in the World War II battle, there's the Japanese garrison fighting against American troops, and it's looking bad for the Japanese. And then the Godzillasaurus arrives and rampages and kills all of the American soldiers and saves the Japanese accidentally. So this was seen as being anti-American. And the complaint was that if you were watching this movie, you were supposed to be cheering against the American soldiers. And isn't it awful that the Japanese are putting out an anti-American movie? Okay, that's the criticism. My answer, no. I don't discuss politics on my channel because it's not relevant to the experience of being a monster kid. But believe me, I would absolutely notice if this movie was anti-American. It's not anti-American. It's not anti-American. It's pro-Japanese, for sure. That's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. The pro-Japanese aspects of this movie are clear. It's a rah-rah, go Japan movie. But they're not making the Americans look bad. There's nothing that the American troops do that's, an atrocity or something. Yes, they're fighting against the Japanese troops because that's what happened in World War II. And it's really not that surprising that the Godzillasaurus would mostly be trampling the American troops because they were the ones that were invading its island at the moment that it appeared. If it had appeared a couple weeks earlier when the Japanese garrison got there, it would have been attacking them too. It wasn't, picking sides in World War II. The idea that the Americans were in this movie, they were the enemies of the Japanese, which is a historical fact, and that they got killed, those are not anti-American things. The fact that the Japanese garrison was saved by Godzilla is a pro-Japan thing. You can see a pro-Japan theme there. That's not the same as an anti-American theme. Think of it this way. Let's say that you love your spouse, okay? For example, I love my wife, right? That doesn't mean that I'm putting down other women. It just means that I love my wife. So if I love my country, that doesn't mean that I'm putting down other countries. If I show the flag of my country, that doesn't mean I'm insulting other countries or I'm against other countries. It just means that I'm pro my country. That's all. That's an important difference. That's a really important difference. People that love their country, it doesn't mean that they're putting down the rest of the world. This movie is pro-Japan. It's made by Japanese filmmakers. It's pro-Japan. It's made primarily for a Japanese audience. All of that is okay. They're allowed to make a movie that, goes rah-rah for their own country. That's not the same as being anti-American. There's nothing in this that is pointing out that the Americans are bad in some way. And I'd like to also emphasize that the time travelers from the future, it's clear to me, it always has been clear to me, that the two men are, one a Russian, the thinner guy is a Russian, and the stockier guy, Wilson, is an American. That seems as clear as could be to me. Is it expressly said in the movie? No, it's not. But if they really were anti-American, why wouldn't they make both of these guys clearly American? They didn't. I think that it's just a lot of hype. This idea that this movie is anti-American is just a lot of hype. It's anti-common sense. It's anti-logic. It's anti-storytelling. But it's not anti-American. There's nothing in here that's putting down America. You see more anti-American stuff in Hollywood movies than you see in this Japanese-made movie. Now, the actual monster action, which is what we're all here for, is great in this film. Godzilla's big fight against King Ghidorah, where he's finally going one-on-one against King Ghidorah, and not, he doesn't have Anguirus or Rodan or Mothra or someone to back him up like he did in all the previous encounters. The actual fight between this larger Godzilla and King Ghidorah is really good. Really good. It was very well done. And it's interesting because in this film, you get to root for Godzilla in that first fight, and then you get to root against Godzilla in his fight against Mecha King Ghidorah later. This, to my knowledge, this is the only Godzilla film where you're rooting for Godzilla in one fight and then against him in another fight within the same movie. So that was an interesting turn. The first time I saw this movie, I didn't like that. I thought it should have ended when Godzilla destroyed King Ghidorah, and it would have been a complete movie. And it would have been a complete movie. But now that I'm used to it and I've seen it a trillion times, I do like the fact that they completely twist the story around, and it's okay for Godzilla to be the good guy in part of the story and still be the bad guy at the end of the movie. Now, Mecha King Ghidorah is awesome. And it occurred to me that while a whole bunch of you watching a video like this, if you're watching a video like this in the first place, you almost certainly have a Godzilla figure of your own. But you might not have a Mecha King Ghidorah figure. I've got Mecha King Ghidorah right here. This is a Bandai Mecha King Ghidorah figure. All right, so if you've never seen the movie somehow, but you know who King Ghidorah is, this is how you mech him up. All right, the middle head and neck are completely cybernetic. There's a spot here where a pilot can be aboard Mecha King Ghidorah. The wings were destroyed in his fight with Godzilla, so these are completely artificial wings. And this is how Mecha King Ghidorah looked. And he looks cool, especially in that breathtaking moment where he first appears in 1991. It's awesome. But Mecha King Ghidorah in toy form doesn't really do a whole lot. The wings are posable, but they don't really make any sense except, in the position they come in. These heads are not movable. They don't turn on the necks. The necks themselves are not posable. The heads just stay bundled up together like this. The legs can be moved, but what are you going to do with the legs? I don't see how a kid could really play with that. It's not doing much. So really, about all that Mecha King Ghidorah can do is to stand there and look good. So you decide if you think this is a good figure or not. I like it. I like it as a display figure, but that's all that it could ever do. You can't pose it. You just have to have it stand there and be awesome all on its own. So there's Mecha King Ghidorah, though. And I do know that they've put Mecha King Ghidorah into some Godzilla video games, but to me that never really made sense because Mecha King Ghidorah only existed for a matter of minutes. He was destroyed and went to the bottom of the sea, this time for good. And, it's like when they put Orga from Godzilla 2000 into a video game. Orga only existed for like maybe 5 minutes. It was created right in front of Godzilla, and Godzilla destroyed it, and that was the end of Orga. So how he would go on in the video games, I don't know. But, okay, willing suspension of disbelief, I know. So, Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. This is actually my favorite of the Heisei series of Godzilla movies. Although I like most of them, this one is my favorite of all. But only because the monster action is so great. Not because of the story elements. The story is just a convoluted jumble. And that's even for a Godzilla movie. Incidentally, when they put this movie out, it did quite well. And this taught Toho Studios to rely on existing monsters rather than make new ones. Because the previous film, Godzilla vs. Biollante, had not done well. And this film, bringing in a fan favorite, King Ghidorah, did well in Japan. So Toho Studios learned their lesson financially and kept bringing in old favorite monsters in their next couple of films in this series. They brought Mothra in the next film, and they brought a new monster, Batra, in side by side. That's okay. But the point is that they brought back another fan favorite, Mothra. And then in the film after that, they brought back two fan favorites, Mechagodzilla and Rodan. So they really learned what they were doing. Then in the next film, they tried to make a new monster, Space Godzilla, and the film was probably the worst Godzilla movie ever made. But that's a matter for a separate video. What did you think of Godzilla versus King Ghidorah? What did you think of the controversy about whether there were anti-American elements in here? Am I completely missing something? What did you think about the convoluted story? As Doctor Who would say, it was wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, but it was just too much. It was too illogical for me. Did it bother you? Let me know what you thought of the monster battles too, because of course, that's what we're all here for. Listen, if you're a fan of classic monsters and vintage horror, check out my book series, the Mourners Woods books. I'm self-published on Amazon. I've written a series of novels with different characters and different monsters in each book. What they have in common is the location, a forbidden wilderness, Mourners Woods. My name again is Paul Edwards. My books are the Mourners Woods books. Thanks for letting me talk to you about Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. I'll see you in Mourners Woods.